Hey, friend. Hey. So, today we're going to be talking about a topic that, let me warn you, may be triggering for some. But before we get started, let me introduce who I am. My name is Dr. Tiffany Ross, and I am a marriage and family therapist. I'm a life coach, and I specifically work with women who are every day healing and recovering from relationship abuse, similar to what we're going to talk about today. So before we just kind of jump on in, I want to give you a minute just in case you need to pause and come back to me when you're ready. You ready? You ready to do this? Then let's go. Now, I'm sure we all know someone who has been in a relationship where there has been some type of abuse. And today we're going to talk about some topics, some areas of abuse that you may not hear a lot of people talk about. But I know from dealing with women every day that these are things that real life people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so over here, what we do, like, we talk about these things because there are things that need to be talked about. There are things that I've dealt with personally in some of the relationships that I've been in. There are things that I know some of my family members and friends have dealt with personally. And here's what I know from working in this profession and working as a therapist and then working every day, in my coaching business and consulting, that some of these things, depending on where you came from, depending on what family you grew up in, have been normalized. And so we think that when they happen to us, that oftentimes they don't go reported. So a lot of times the numbers are very low. If you go to look up statistics on domestic violence, the numbers are sometimes low, and sexual abuse, especially sexual abuse. And if you have not heard my training on sexual abuse, we did a whole training on childhood sexual abuse, and you can check that out. I'll link it below in the show's comment section where you'll be able to directly access it. But we talked about childhood sexual abuse and how a lot of times these things aren't going reported. So let's start here. Let's start with the different types of abuse. Because usually when you say domestic violence, well, you know, it, we automatically, I don't know what it is, but we automatically think when someone is saying domestic violence that we're talking about physical violence. So let's start with the definition, because I believe that everything, we should have some working definition. So what is domestic violence? Domestic violence, or you may hear some people call it intimate partner violence, or IPV, according to the domestic violence hotline. It includes dating violence or dating abuse. It includes relationship abuse. So it doesn't matter if you're married. It doesn't matter if you're dating. It doesn't matter if this is a friend or a parent. Abuse is abuse, and is defined as a pattern of behaviors used by one partner or person to maintain power and control over another partner. And particularly, when we're talking about intimate partner abuse, is particularly in an intimate relationship. And so, did it ever, in that definition, did it say it was only power and control that involved physical violence? No, it didn't. It didn't say that it was just physical violence, because we know in our, in working in this field, I know that domestic violence can present in many, many, many different forms. Okay. So let's start off with talking about the obvious one, which is physical abuse. And we, of course, know what physical abuse is. I think sometimes we think that, when people have black eyes, because that's what the movies tell us, or they have scars all over their body, or something like that, that's physical abuse. But physical abuse also includes those things that you don't necessarily see, like the pushing and the shoving, that where you may not end up with a black eye, in regards to it, but it's still considered physical abuse. So you may be experiencing physical abuse if your partner has or repeatedly does some of the following things, like pull your hair or slap you or kick you or bite you or choke you or smother you. And mind you, like those aren't things that people, sometimes people will see, like, if it's hard, you may see bruising and all of that, but you don't always see bruising. Or this one, like, or they may prevent you from sleeping or eating, or like all of this, my beloved, are signs of physical abuse. And of course, this list can go this long, but I just want to kind of hit at some high points, or some of the most prevalent things that you see. And something else that I really want to talk about here, that we don't think about when we think about domestic violence or physical abuse, is that when someone is throwing something at you, or if you're in a car with someone and they threaten to, to run the car off the road, or they swerve or whatever, or they're driving recklessly and really endangering your life. Like all of these are signs of physical abuse. So if they trap you behind something, or they stand in front of the door so that you can't get out of the door or escape in some kind of way. Like all of these things are not okay, and they are signs of physical abuse. So let's go to the next one, which is emotional abuse. Now, I tend to stay here a lot because a lot of the clients that I see are suffering from emotional abuse. And a lot of times they don't know that it's emotional abuse because, well, let's face it, our society really normalized things that we should normalize. And we see that when we're looking at the Real Housewives and the 11 hip hops, and we're seeing all of these things that culture is showing us on a day-to-day basis, that of how women are treated, or how men are treated even by women, because men aren't the only abusers. Women can abuse too. And so culture would teach us, or will are showing us these things, and really their I don't want to say their aim is to normalize it, but in showing us these things repeatedly, they're literally normalizing this behavior. And I think some of the platforms have gotten to the point to where they draw the line and say, hey, no, we're not going to tolerate certain things. But a lot of times when it comes down to the emotional and the verbal abuse, they don't draw the lines with that. And so calling each other's out your name, or calling your name, or if your partner is insulting you, or make you feel small, even for just asking a question, they're really demeaning and disrespectful, or they're acting like, very jealous or possessive over you, then that's the sign that there may be some emotional abuse there. And here's what I say about emotional abuse. Can I be real about you about emotional abuse? A lot of times people do not detect emotional abuse from the beginning. And there's a good reason for that. And that's because with emotional abuse, by the time that you realize that it's emotional abuse that you're dealing with, well, your self esteem has now been impacted, and you're questioning yourself. Every move that you make, you're questioning yourself, or you leave that relationship and you don't feel as confident as you did before, or you feel stuck and like you can't move forward, or you're around that person and your body literally tenses up because because you don't feel safe with them. So emotional abuse is not something that you detect. It's not like physical abuse. Like physical abuse we can label because they're actual physical acts, but emotional abuse is a little bit harder to detect. And I've had women who have gone through divorces, or have gone through relationships, particularly divorces where there's children involved, and they're trying to get custody for their children, or custody of their children, because they're coming out of a very emotionally toxic relationship, and the court still will grant full custody to the parent who is emotionally abusive. And here's because emotional abuse is really hard to detect. Like, it's not hard to detect, but it's hard to prove, especially in a court of law, because the court of law wants proof. And well, it's hard to detect that. It's hard to prove that you have been in an emotionally abusive relationship. So a lot of times with people who are emotionally manipulative, like, they tend to hide who they are, and they gaslight. And so a lot of people that are on the outside, that have not been entangled with them, or didn't have a relationship, or very close relationship where they've observed their behavior, well, they probably think you're lying. Let's just be honest. they probably think you're lying because the person that you're describing to them don't fit the view of the person that they see. So people who are emotionally abusive or toxic, as I can call it, as I say it too, you'll hear me say toxic sometimes. They're masters at being manipulative, and so the outside world may see a very different version of them, just like you did in the beginning. So in the beginning, they're like masters at disguising who they are, and they do that so that you can drop your guard. And once your guard is dropped, then the real them will start coming out over time. So another thing that they would attempt to do is to really isolate you from your family, for your friends, or they monitor your activities, like how long you were on the phone, or when you said you were going to call them back and you didn't call them back at the specific time that you said that you would call them back, or they'll attempt to try to control what you look like. Like, oh, you got on too much makeup. Why you got to put on all that makeup? And why you got to wear your clothes like that? Like that. But the whole goal behind that is to really tear down your self-esteem. And so verbal abuse is another one that I feel like we normalize too much in our society. Like, and I'm just gonna say this. I don't care if this video goes anywhere on YouTube or not, because I feel like the right people that need to hear this will hear this, period. So the verbal abuse we tend to normalize in our culture as you cursing out each other, and saying demeaning and hurtful things to one another, or your partner saying them to you, or you saying it to them, or threatening you. Like those things are not okay. Like, it's not okay for the person that says that they love you to call you outside your name. Like, that's not okay. There's nothing okay about that. These are abusive behaviors, and the only way that we can really do something different is by telling the truth. So another one is sexual abuse. And I have another one. I have a couple of clients I've had that have said things to me about how they were in marriages, and how they didn't think it was sexual abuse because they were married. And just to know that when you're in a relationship with a person, like, marriage does not give another person consent to have their way with you at any point in time. Like, consent still should happen in a marriage relationship. Like, having a safe relationship is, and a respectful, healthy relationship is where both partners consent. So it's not okay for someone to force themselves on you, whether you're dating them, whether you're not dating them, whether you're married to them. It's not okay. And so sexual abuse happens, it's when someone forces themselves on you and you didn't give them consent. So they can insult you in sexual ways, or make you try to perform acts that you are not comfortable with performing, or they manipulate you into having sex with them, or performing some kind of sexual act with them, even when you're not feeling like it. You don't feel you're tired, or you're sick, or physically your body is not there. And and I've had women who say, after they've had children, and being with a partner who forces themselves to have sex even before the doctor releases them, like, that's not okay. Or they may try to choke you, or perform different bondage type acts that you did not consent to, when you are in the act of having sexual relations with them. Or they hold you down, or try to force you down, or threaten you with weapons, or a knife to your throat, or something. Like, these things happen. When I tell you, these things happen. Or they even ignore your feelings during sex. If you say, hey, stop, that hurts, like, but they keep going. Like, these are signs of sexual abuse, and they're not okay. They're not okay. And then the last one is another one that we just really don't talk about enough. And that's financial abuse. That's financial abuse. And we see that sometimes when, the one partner is the breadwinner in the relationship, and the other partner may be the person that stays at home, or the person that makes substantially less. And so that's not always the case. Like, I've had clients where the partner brought the most of the money home, and the person that stayed at home still was financially abusive with the other person's money. Like that is a thing too. And so if they're providing you allowance and they're closely monitoring the money and demanding of your purchases and tracking everything that you spend and how you spend it, and look, you can't access the money and only one person has access to the money, and prevent like you don't even know what's in the account because they don't even want to give you access to the account, or they're preventing you from working. And they're saying, you stay at home while I go do this, or you can't work because if you go to work, then you may cheat or whatever. Like all of this, these are can be there are signs of financial abuse. And here's why, is because it's all about maintaining power and maintaining control, and it's not okay. So some of the impact of any type of abuse is that it hurts your self-esteem. Like it impacts how you even start viewing yourself. And so your self-esteem, your self-confidence, like you're robbed of that. And even though you may have been, and I've had people who were pretty self-confident in the beginning, but after going through the trauma of being in these types of relationships where their confidence is impacted and they don't feel as confident as they did before, so they feel stuck, and they struggle with setting boundaries, even after that relationship, because they don't necessarily know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, or their view of relationships are tainted. And especially if they don't do the work and do the healing process, then their view of relationships is going to be tainted. And we see this too with children who have grown up in abusive situations, where they've observed their parents or caregivers or people that are in authority. If they've observed abuse, then we see that they struggle in relationships as well, because they don't know what a healthy relationship look like, and they don't know what boundaries look like in relationships, or that you should still have boundaries even in your marriage. Like it's just not okay for your partner, even if you're married, to just do whatever whenever they want to do it, and you should be okay with that. Like that's not okay. It is not okay. And so now, like what now? What do you do now that you've kind of have an idea of the types of abuse that we've gone over today? Like, what do you do now? What do you do now? Number one, reach out for help. I kind of forewarned you that we're going to be talking about a heavy topic on this week, and that it can be triggering for some. And I know I'm not oblivious to know that chances are, if you're watching this, that you may be the person that have gone through one of these types of abuse that I have talked about on today, or you may know someone that is currently going through either one of these types of abuse that we've talked about today. And I would say this to you: to get help, to get help. And I know the typical pattern of any abuse is that, it starts off really, really good, and then it gradually gets worse. It don't always happen in that way, but sometimes it does. And then it gradually declines, and then they come back and they apologize, and then you start that cycle all back over again. And I want you to know that if you're in a moment right now where it seems like it is getting better, and but you know that this moment feels all too familiar, that they've apologized like that before and have come back and done the same things over and over, and it's just it's gonna be a never ending cycle. So I would say to you to do what you need to do in order to take care of you. And if you have children, then well, that adds a whole nother layer, because you're not just making decisions for you, you're also making life decisions for your children as well. And so I would say, if your safety is compromised, the number one thing that you should prioritize is getting or being in a safe place. And so the domestic violence hotline is an amazing resource for you. I'll post that in the show's comments on today. Actually, I think it may already be down there, but if not, I'll make sure that it's down there. But it's Domestic Violence Hotline, and they have a hotline. It's the hotline.org, or you can reach them by dialing 1-800-799-SAFE. So the priority for you right now is to just get somewhere safe, be somewhere safe, so that you can begin your healing process. Because, baby girl, son, bruh, what, whoever you are that is watching me, you matter. You matter. And you matter so much to God that he put every ounce of who you are, like, everything that is inside of you. And I know you may not feel like it's a whole lot right now, but it's there for a reason. It is there for a reason. You are here on this earth for a reason, and you should be valued and respected and honored and treated like you matter, because, baby, you do. If we could help you, we've also included in our show's notes for today, our services as well. We offer coaching and consulting services. And so if you're just looking for some way, like, what is my next steps? What are my next steps? How can I do this? I know, like, going through that, and even just the thought of being alone and having to walk through the process and starting over, and possibly having to start over with nothing and have little people or that are looking up to you. You may feel like, oh my God, I failed. Like, I failed. I felt myself. I felt them. I felt my family. I felt God. Like, you may have all of these thoughts and feelings that you are faced with as you're deciding your next step. Well, we want you to know that you don't have to do that alone. Like, you don't have to face your next steps by yourself. We offer a free 30-minute discovery call where we can help you walk through what would be the best way that you can take the next steps that you know that you need to take. Bottom line, we want you to know that we're here and that you don't have to be alone. You are not alone. You have someone here that is willing to work through this with you, walk you through this, and to connect you with resources that will help you get to someplace safe. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. All of my contact information is included below. Or if you want, if just comment. If you comment, you can comment and put your email address. I know that's personal information, but if not, my email address is Tiffany, Tiffany at drtiffanyross.com. Let me see if I can put that here, where you'll be able to see it. But it's Tiffany, or if not, I'll include it below. I don't know if I'll be able to put that here. I got you. I think I can put that here so that you will be able to contact me, just via email if you are needing some support. And we want you to know that we are here to support you. Thank you so much for watching on today. You have a most amazing day. And remember, my friend, that you are worth it.